Next up, we got the horrifying real events behind memes by Chilling Scenes. And if you enjoyed this vid, make sure to like, comment, subscribe. We about to get straight into this.
The "Oh that's real nice" meme comes from an episode of the cartoon SpongeBob SquarePants.
SpongeBob?
Where
What's
Martin,
crazy about
a side
SpongeBob?
character in the show, looks into a toilet bowl only to find a realistic-looking SpongeBob floating inside. The moment itself tied into the overall plot of that episode, but the meme that came out of it was meant to contrast someone doing an ordinary task like going to the toilet or clocking in at work with an unusual or disturbing discovery. And while most of the posts mentioned completely fictional events, a few instances of the meme format referenced real events that actually happened. This particular incident took place at the Bethlehem wastewater treatment plant on January 7, 2000. A worker named Scott Batchman had clocked into his night shift at around 11 p.m. when he noticed a pink, fleshy object while cleaning out a catch basin. He took it out and rinsed it off to get a clearer look. However, nothing could have prepared him for what that object turned out to be.
What was in there?
Scott was holding one half of a human brain in his hand.
Oh my god, what are you doing, chat? If you work and you gotta clean out, wait, I think you gotta clean out something. I didn't really hear what he had to do. He found half a brain. What are you doing? Comment down below, bro.
It was a bit difficult to
I would
identify,
be so scared.
but Scott's past work experience at a coroner's office allowed him to confirm that it was real and not a prop. He immediately contacted the authorities and handed it over to them. This discovery happened on a Friday night, so a proper analysis didn't happen until Monday. However, according to initial reports, the brain looked like it was fresh and had not been in the sewer system for very long. The situation became worse when it was sent over to a DNA lab for testing, which confirmed
why would somebody put a brain in the sewer though?
Unfortunately, authorities had no matching DNA on record, making it impossible to determine whose brain it was. The treatment plant also received waste from 13 different municipalities, so they couldn't link it to a nearby missing person report either. The question now was, how did a piece of human brain end up in the sewer system in the first place? One possible explanation the authorities considered was that it came from a medical cadaver, suggesting that a medical student might have flushed it down the drain either on purpose or somehow by accident. However, the lack of any major decomposition pointed to a much darker possibility. The brain likely came from the victim of a homicide, with the killer attempting to destroy evidence by dismembering the body and flushing the pieces down the toilet one by one. And unfortunately, it seems their plan worked as intended. The investigators were never able to link the discovery to any reported crimes, leaving the case an unsolved mystery to this day.
It had to have been like someone murdered and just tried to get rid of it. Like, why else would there be a brain in a sewer?
The traumatized Mr. Incredible meme depicts a normal-looking Mr. Incredible next to a haunting, uncanny version of him.
This is so. There's something crazy about this.
And after format to highlight how hidden context changes a person's perspective, where people who don't know see a surface-level image or phrase and remain blissfully ignorant, represented by a smiling Mr. Incredible. In contrast, people who know understand the dark, tragic, or disturbing reality behind the subject, represented by his hollow-eyed, traumatized face. This specific version of the meme refers to a silent tragedy that occurred in many parts of Mexico in the late 1980s, and the cause for it originated over 7,000 miles or more than 11,000 kilometers away in Ukraine. On April 26, 1986, the Chernobyl nuclear plant suffered the worst nuclear disaster in history.
That building
During a botched safety test, a massive power surge caused Reactor 4 to explode, releasing a plume of radioactive fallout that drifted across Europe. The immediate blast killed 2 workers, while dozens more lost their lives to acute radiation sickness shortly after trying to contain the fallout. However, by the time they were able to enclose the malfunctioning reactor, it had already spread massive clouds of toxic, radioactive particles across Europe and Asia. Mexico, in theory, should have been far enough from the disaster site to stay unaffected. In reality, government corruption turned it into a problem that ordinary Mexicans were forced to live with in their day-to-day lives. You see, radioactive particles from the Chernobyl meltdown contaminated crops and livestock across Europe and Asia, making a significant portion of their food unsafe for consumption. Ireland was among the more heavily affected countries, with thousands of tons of milk in the region becoming radioactive. The Irish government tried to get rid of this contaminated milk by selling it to poorer countries. And after getting—
That's so effed up, bro. You got your milk contaminated, so you sell it to broke people, bro. That's genuinely messed up. You're basically just killing people, bro.
Rejected by Brazil,
Yo.
they reached an agreement with the Mexican government to sell 40,000
Mexico
tons
took
of radioactive powdered milk at discounted prices.
So Mexico knew
the toxic
it
milk
was
reached
radioactive?
Mexico in June 1987 and was then
Mexico knew
distributed
that's
across the
effed up
country
on
by a
both sides,
state-owned
bro.
company called Conasupo. It made its way into ordinary households where consumers had no idea they were drinking what was essentially poison. The truth finally came out when Navy Vice Admiral Manuel Rodriguez Gordillo commissioned a nuclear physicist to test the milk. And as it turned out, the milk the Mexican government bought from Ireland exceeded 10 times the permitted limits of radioactivity.
Wait, so
the
did
government
Mexico
initially
know?
tried to suppress the news by accusing the whistleblower of defamation, stripping them of their position, and putting them in prison. But the backlash got bad enough that the government was forced to issue a complete recall by January 1988. Unfortunately, the damage was already done. Over the following decade, the number of children suffering from cancer skyrocketed.
Bro, that's sad, bro. They really put their people in danger just to get some cheap milk. Like, bro. And then the people that sold it, yo.
Drastically. Many endured life-altering deformities, while countless others lost their lives because
You
of it.
just think you
Even
drinking a
those who
cup of
survived the initial radiation
you just think you drinking a cup of milk, and then next thing you know, your future gone cooked, bro.
poisoning
Like,
now
yo.
face a higher risk of developing cancer later in life.
Dang.
To me, it seems like January always starts the same way. New resolutions, new projects,
Is that ad?
packed to start. And if you're anything like me, it seems to always symptoms get ignored and you can someone's dermatologist still.
I know it, bro. I knew that was an ad. What the heck is that? That is scary, bro. Who drew that?
The deeply unsettling Mr. Incredible meme illustrates a person's reaction to discovering something truly horrifying. The template is often paired with a caption highlighting disturbing events or shocking facts, and this particular use of it is no different. It summarizes the horrific sight a Chinese explorer named the Beanbag Adventures uncovered in February 2022. Beanbag's content on Douyin, which is the Chinese version of TikTok, revolved around him exploring abandoned buildings and showcasing any interesting finds.
Oh no, this
However,
is dangerous.
one of these adventures spiraled into a nightmare his viewers could have never imagined. The video started with him entering an abandoned hospital or lab of some kind. It was extremely run down and appeared to have been vacant for over a decade, if not more. Broken furniture, torn clothes, and glass jars were everywhere. But what really caught Beanbag's attention weren't these items. He was more drawn to the overpowering smell that was filling the whole building. Curious, he decided to find its source. He followed the paths where the smell grew stronger and eventually reached a strange, dilapidated room with a pool in the middle of it. He looked inside the pool.
He found some bodies, didn't he?
Viewers claimed that it was filled with movie props. The pool was filled with what looked like the remains of dozens of children floating in a mysterious liquid. He spent barely a minute inside this room before the smell became too unbearable and he had to run out gagging for air. The horrifying sight left most of his viewers in shock, with many also trying to figure out if any of it was real.
That's why I would never do that, bro. You gonna find some crazy
many accepted
stuff.
his movie prop explanation and didn't question it further, especially since the alternative was far too gruesome for most to even contemplate. A lot of the remains also showed few signs of decomposition, making it easier to buy into the prop theory. However, the possibility of these remains being real became impossible to ignore when Beanbag returned to the same location 10 months later. This time, he decided to explore the rest of the building before going back to the pool.
You go
Unfortunately,
back?
the other locations proved to be just as disturbing. I can't show most of this on YouTube, but he discovered rooms full of extremely realistic human skeletons, children's
Bro,
toys
you
and
genuinely
masks,
go
and a few
back?
glass jars
Yo, you don't
with
get
what looked
nobody
like
to
human
like go there,
fetuses
check it
stored
out.
inside them. Things somehow got even worse when he returned to the pool room and found things that weren't there before, like glass jars and children's clothes on the ground, and most unsettling, a blue tarp partially covering the pool. This showed that someone else had been in that room in the last 10 months. But that wasn't even the worst part. The most disturbing part of Beanbag's second visit came when he pointed his camera at the pool. It not only contained more remains than
I'm telling you, this is real, bro. This is a serial killer's place, bro. You should call somebody, bro.
But many of the previous ones were also noticeably more decomposed than last time, disproving his movie prop claim. Though, given what people now know about the situation, it seemed he called them movie props just so he could feign ignorance in case he ever got into trouble. It also helped in keeping the videos from getting removed from the platform. Put simply, Beanbag and now most of his audience suspected that this room was a part of an illegal organ harvesting operation known as a corpse factory. You see, China has one of the lowest organ donor rates in the world due to cultural reasons. Yet, despite this limitation, the process of actually getting an organ for a transplant is relatively easy as long as you have the money. That's because most of these organs are said to come from China's massive black market, where merchants illegally abduct victims to meet the demand. Some reports also claim that the Chinese government is somehow involved in this operation as well, with it allegedly harvesting from minority prisoners that aren't even on death row. Even if the government wasn't involved, Beanbag was putting a target on himself by possibly exposing such a large-scale criminal operation. So, acting clueless was his best bet. But even then, his safety wasn't guaranteed. Fans were worried about his well-being. This
so that's why he didn't report it.
Substantial when Beanbag's Douyin account got terminated out of nowhere shortly after posting the second video.
They pulled up with them black trucks. They got him.
Beanbag exposed was trying to silence him before the story could spread further. Though, just as they were about to lose hope, Beanbag returned to the internet with new videos. However, the 2 videos of him exploring the hospital were now deleted from his account. Beanbag also kept posting more videos exploring other abandoned buildings and never even brought up the hospital again. If someone was